Welcome to the June the 11th, 1996 taping of It's Happening in Grand Prairie, and it happened. And this is the history tape number 279, and we're very excited today. We have a very special guest with us in what we deem an exit interview. And actually, he isn't really exiting our lives because he's still going to be involved in the Metroplex, but we want to welcome to the set today a very special young man, Mr. Herb Booth.
Ruthie,
welcome
good to
back.
be here.
Welcome back, young
Thank
man.
you.
All right. And you are exiting from the Grand Prairie News, and
Right.
already have, I believe. And we'd just like to document your exit from that and find out what's really going to be happening to the real Herb Booth. How does that sound?
That's great.
All right.
We're I have been for the last 2 weeks over at the Arlington Morning News. I started with them approximately 2 weeks ago, and just after the Memorial Day holiday. And I am a sports copy editor over there right now. Yes. And we're 5 days a week publication. It's an offshoot of the Dallas Morning News. And of course my job as editor with the Grand Prairie News ceased, on that day. And so looking forward to new challenges and everything, and it meant more responsibility, more pay, and basically more frequency too. And that's something I was looking at because I really enjoy the deadline pressure of, nearly daily newspaper activity and everything. And so we're 5 days a week, and we should be going to 7 days a week, sometime in the future. We're not sure when. But we're located over there at 1112 Copeland Road, and Suite 400.
It's separate and apart where the suburban newspapers
Yes, ma'am,
are.
it is.
Yes.
And even though we're all owned by Belo Corporation,
yes,
so we're under the same corporate banner, AH Belo Corporation, which owns the Dallas Morning News, and they own the suburban newspapers of which Grand Prairie is a part of that. They also own WFAA Channel 8 in Dallas there. They own several TV stations all over. They've just bought a couple of newspapers too, the Bryan College Station Eagle down in Aggie Land, and also up in Owensboro, Kentucky. They bought that Owensboro Messenger, I believe. So
you didn't have a choice of whether to go to Bryan College Station or Kentucky or the Arlington Morning?
Well, not really. I didn't pursue those other papers though, and I'm happy in this area. I enjoy this area. I like this area, and I'm originally from San Antonio, of course, and that will always kind of be home to me. But I've lived up here in this area now for 8 years, and I enjoy it here, and I like this Mid-Cities area. Grand Prairie, Arlington, Hurst, Euless, Bedford. Each city has a little bit different personality and everything. And Arlington, at nearly 300,000 people, was the largest city in the United States without a daily newspaper. And so Belo Corporation decided to correct that. And the Arlington News, which was a part of DFW Suburban Newspapers and a sister paper to the Grand Prairie News, ceased operations on April 1st, and on April 1st, the Arlington Morning News was born.
All right. So we need to find out, for those that have not met you on television before, a little bit about the beginnings of Herb Booth in San Antonio, and your dad being in communications. Give us a little background on some of that, would you?
We come from a big family, five kids, and I'm the oldest. My youngest brother is Chris. He's 10 years younger. 3 girls sandwiched in between. And my mom and dad raised us in this little town right outside of San Antonio called Kirby, Texas, just east of San Antonio. And I'd say we grew up pretty middle class. We never went hungry, but there were a lot of things we didn't really have. We didn't really need either.
You didn't have your own car by the time you were 15?
No, ma'am. No, I had my own car when I could afford that. And so we grew up there and went to Converse Judson High School, which back when I was a student there, and let's not really dwell on how long ago that was, but
Talk about that
but
tomorrow.
okay, but there were back then we were just a little country school basically, and since then they've won 3 state championships in football,
Wonderful.
and so they have built up quite a reputation for themselves, and it's a large school, akin to Plano, really. I mean, it's that big, and so I went to school there, and my dad, was in the broadcasting business. So I think that my inquisitiveness and I guess some of my traits, come from him.
Yes.
And but I think some of my traits, come from my mom too. I think being a good listener is part of being a good journalist, and I think that especially she would listen, at the end of my day at school, what went on that day.
Great.
And so I think I learned that from her, being a good listener. And went to UT Austin. I guess first I went to San Antonio College, a little junior college there in San Antonio, and studied journalism there. And then went on to the University of Texas at Austin. And got a degree after many years.
What brought you into the Metroplex?
What brought me into the Metroplex is I had a job offer from Lois Brown, who is still the editor of the Richardson News, which is a sister publication of the Grand Prairie News. Back then, all the suburban papers were 6 days a week, and it was a great opportunity for me because I had just worked at weeklies, and I did, I had done some stringing for dailies like the San Antonio Light and the Austin American Statesman thing, newspapers like that. And I'd worked at the Daily Texan, which was 5 days a week, but I never worked at a professional newspaper that was 6 days a week. And so that intrigued me, and I accepted the job. And at first I covered business in Richardson, and I also covered Dallas Area Rapid Transit for the DARTs, for the suburban cities that were part of DART.
Yes.
And so that gave me a lot of experience, and I saw a lot of the region that way because DART was a regional kind of organization and everything, and that was kind of neat. And so after 3 years there, and we had cut back, I guess, at the Richardson News and all those suburban newspapers from 6 days a week to 4 days a week, and then 2 days a week. And so I was covering not only business in DART, but business in City Hall in Richardson. After I did that for a while, 3 years, I guess, I went to the Garland News as a news editor. Stayed there for about 8 months, and then there was an opening in Grand Prairie as the editor, and Dan Crow, and who's the president of our company, and Banks Dishman, a former vice president. He's no longer with us, but they both saw fit that they thought that I'd be a good editor, and so they hired me onto that spot.
How long ago?
4 years. 4 years and 2 months.
4 years and 2
I
months.
served as editor, and
Yes.
Gene Abrahamson, who is a police reporter there and former sports editor, he's been there 23 years at the same newspaper, Grand Prairie News. He was counting up the number of editors he had served under and stopped at 16 editors, 17 editors, something like that. And so out of those editors, I have the longest tenure, he said. So
Yes. 4 years and 2 months.
4 years and 2 months, which is not really a great deal of time, but I was fortunate to learn a lot here, and I think that'll carry on to wherever I go, really.
During your tenure here, you have seen fit to assign several different people to the City Hall, to the Grand Prairie ISD, and to lifestyle editors. You've helped many people build on their careers by giving them that wonderful opportunity. Would you like to tell how exciting that's been to?
That's been probably the most rewarding part of my job, is working with all these great people. And it's just been, it's been a relatively easy job. It really has, because of the people I've worked with, and not that, and I don't want to say that the people who have worked for me, because we've never worked for each other. We've always worked with each other.
With each other.
Yeah, and I think that's important in a, on a small staff, that you have that kind of working relationship. I mean, my 3 news editors, for instance, Teresa Smith Newton and Penny Boyette and Kathy Edgar, the most recent. I trust them to make any decision on their own when I'm not there. I mean, it's just like having another editor. And Grand Prairie is very fortunate in having that experienced staff there serving the community, really.
During this tenure in Grand Prairie, have y'all won any kind of awards or special recognitions, or has the Dallas Morning News or Belo Company patted you on the back for a good job? Or tell us something about your...
We've won several awards. The most recent being we won 2nd place in the Suburban Newspaper of America contest. More than I guess there were more than 4,000 entries into one contest. That's all the categories put together, but there were probably about a dozen categories, and 4,000 entries is quite a few. We came in 2nd place in breaking news story, and it was unfortunately about a teacher down at Kennedy Middle School who had been a former felon.
Yes.
And so we'll go into that, but
Yes.
but we did win second place in that. We've won several first places on lifestyle pages, lifestyle stories. I remember one year Penny Boyette won several first place awards on her feature on the Params.
Yes.
And she won several first place awards on the feature she did on the breast cancer survivor. Her name escapes me right now, but she teaches over in AISD. But I've won awards. I won a 3rd place in editorial writing this last year in Suburban Newspaper of America award. Randy Jennings, our sports editor, won a 2nd place last year, I think, in sports column writing. So we're a talented staff, and dating back to, I guess, 1955, we've won more than 100 awards. The Grand Prairie News has. And in fact, if you ever want a list, just call Kathy and she knows where to get it.
She has all
She
the
has
list
all
of
of
all
them,
of the
everything documented and everything, and that's as far back as Teresa. I think Teresa started the list and everything. But if you're ever interested in that, we can certainly get your list.
When I came to the West Door, which I like to come to the West Door to deliver things to the
That's
Grand
right.
Prairie News, I was met not by Kathy, but by Amy.
Amy Rockmore.
We
yes.
have a brand new
Yes.
lifestyle
Yes.
editor.
Yes.
She says she's doing double duty, doing schools and lifestyle,
Yeah.
but
Until we get a school report, well, not we anymore, but
yes,
until Patrick
Yes.
Waskovich, who was the new editor.
Yes.
He came from Garland. In fact, pretty much followed
the pattern you followed.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
And so, which was kind of interesting. But until he hires an education reporter, Amy will be doing double duty. But she's quite qualified and very competent, and it was almost a shame to see her go from the education beat, because she did such a great job there.
Didn't she do a wonderful
Yeah,
job?
yeah.
All right, now how about Kathy? What's Kathy going to be doing?
Kathy
Edgar.
Kathy Edgar. She is the news editor now.
Oh.
And we promoted. I promoted her to that. I guess a couple of 3 weeks before I left, and that's another thing that you have to realize on a small staff. Even though all these people have many talents, and Kathy was terrific. I mean, number one is lifestyle editor. It's difficult to say no you can't be promoted. I mean, you just
Yeah.
can't say that. You can't practice that. You have to embrace that. You have to say, fine, you know, let's go ahead and do this, and we'll find someone. And we found Amy, and we need to get somebody for Amy, but you know, I mean, you have to do that in a small paper environment, I think.
Well, this way you're giving Amy an opportunity to be not only in the education field, but in the lifestyle field. And one of these days, when she hits all of the bases around that, she may become an editor.
This is true.
Yes.
You never know that. And Kathy might too, for that matter.
Just like Ms. Young.
That's right. Ann Young. She
Yes.
started off as a reporter, and then news editor, and then an editor. And that's a good, I think that's a healthy path to follow. You know, it's difficult, I think, bringing in someone entirely new who's not used to the company culture or not exactly familiar with, I guess, patterns and how to do things and things like that.
How do you, as an editor, handle, like when you lost Mr. Giddings, and he left you for outside of the,
Right.
of that work? How do you cover for things like, he was wonderful with the city council. He had covered us for so many years. Does that leave you doing a little bit of the work yourself?
I did a little bit of covering the old city council meetings for a while until we hired someone good, and I, you know, I think that experience is the best factor, or the best, I guess, medicine for hiring somebody good.
Yeah.
Because in the past I've hired some people who haven't been perfect, and you know, it's better to wait for that person who's going to fit in and everything. And I think Stephanie Cherry
Yes.
does just that. I mean, she doesn't have the same habits or the same ways of getting the news as David, but she's just as, or even more effective in some ways.
Yes.
And so Stephanie has fit in very nicely.
She really has.
She really has, and she enjoys it, covering city council and politics and things like that.
If you were king and got to have your own newspaper and appoint everyone to the different jobs, who would be probably your favorites, if you can say that without getting in bad trouble with your career? Who would be outstanding people for you to have on your staff? Maybe not necessarily the ones you worked with at Grand Prairie, but of all the people that you've worked with in your news media experience.
That's tough to say, because I've worked with people at different points in my life, and as a news editor, for instance, with the Daily Texan on the campus of the University of Texas, I mean, we were the 14th largest daily in the state. And so there were a lot of people there who I could trust to go out and ferret out a story. There were some people who I could trust to write a headline there. But it was a different kind of product, you know, than the Grand Prairie News, or even than the Herald News, which is a community weekly I worked for down in San Antonio. So I think that if I had anyone, it would be somebody like, say, Randy Jennings or Gene Abrahamson, who those two guys have worked and worked at one publication for 20 plus years, and you cannot replace that experience and that breadth of knowledge. If I didn't know who someone was, I mean, Gene may not be able to answer me, but he'd get an answer for me, and he'd know who to call to get an answer for me. And the same thing with Randy on the sports side. And really having having people like that on your staff wherever you are is invaluable. So I would have to say that I'd want at least one person on that staff who was extremely versed in that community and knew exactly what was going on and been in that community for a number of years.
Do you have anything in your mind now that you've gone over to Arlington and you're working in sports? What kind of a little map or an outline are you working toward What would you like to become when you get to be 25?
25, oh my, now we're really fibbing. But, well, I would like to, of course, I aspire to work for, a daily, and I think the Arlington Morning News will be a daily very soon, as I said, and I think that, a city with nearly 300,000 people, and this is nothing against Grand Prairie or Carrollton or Irving or any of the other cities in this area, but if you have 300,000 people and you don't have a daily newspaper, I mean, at some point, Arlington will pass Fort Worth in population. I mean, the demographers over at North Central Texas Council of Governments can point to a specific year, and I think that Arlington having their own newspaper is important. I think that being with that publication from ground zero is pretty neat.
What do you think about the Rangers now that you're getting to cover sports and things, and last night and one more time if they do this tonight? How exciting. And you get to cover all of that?
We do. I'm mostly in the office though, proofing copy and getting those reporters to turn in their copy on time and writing headlines and laying out things, assigning pictures and things like that. And right now, in fact, during the summertime, because we still are a community newspaper, the Arlington Morning News wants to carry on the same types of things that the Grand Prairie News, the Irving News, all those sister publications stand for. And I think because of that, we're having, we cover the Rangers, but we really don't cover them in a way that the Metros cover them, and that meaning the Dallas Morning News and the other newspaper. We
that other one.
That's right. We cover them in more of a community atmosphere. For instance, last week we ran a story on Juan Gonzalez, who took some kids who had won a contest down to San Antonio and SeaWorld and flew in the Shamu plane and all that stuff. And see, stories like that, that is what the Arlington Morning News and the Grand Prairie News, for that matter, and all the other community newspapers of our chain want to be like. I mean, we want to cover those stories. It's not specifically a sports story, but we covered it because it's a community story.
Your next assignment may be after sports. What would you wish for if you were king?
I think I'd eventually like to move into the news side probably again and
work your way through the chairs in that.
Exactly, and maybe be an assistant editor or an editor someday again. I'm sure the opportunity will come someday. Not right away though. And I'm having fun with what I'm doing right now. I really am.
If you had your wishes and you wanted to really give a message to young folks that might be in our viewing audience about your career and them setting their sights and what it would cost them in time and energy and application, what would you have to say to them for how about a little 3-minute lecture to the boys and girls that might be watching us?
What I would say to them, basically, is to be concerned and care about your community. I can't tell you the number of times as an editor of your local community newspaper, I went out to schools to speak and saw these fairly blank, expressionless faces, and you can't help but know and feel that was passed down to them, because you look at the exit polls or the how many people vote and things like that, or how many people belong. I mean, you and I see the same faces wherever we go, Ruthie.
Yes.
And I think more than anything else, I tell them to get involved and care about your community, wherever that might be. I mean, it's not the same as it was 10, 20, or 30 years ago, where you had a job for life and you're going to be in one community until the day you die. raise a family there, and that things aren't like that anymore, but you're still a part of a community wherever you are. And I think that caring about that community and being involved and, you know, I guess staking out a claim in the community is great. And that's, I think that's the advice I give.
And it's been fun to be out and especially to speak to young people, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has been. And I think that that's another aspect of my job at the Grand Prairie News that I'll miss, because I won't be able to do as much of that over at the Arlington Morning News.
And since you spent such a great part of life in San Antonio, Texas, how are you acclimating yourself to the Metroplex, and would you ever want to go back to San Antonio maybe and do a paper there?
I might. That's a possibility. Of course, they've undergone some change there as well, with the San Antonio Light going out of business and the Express News being, you know, the lone ranger in town.
Yeah.
And so I think that if I went back, it would have to be, you know, in a management type role where I could, you know, make some changes, because I'd want to change some things, I think.
Okay. Well, it's been wonderful to have you on the set today. And your favorite, we have about a minute and a half left.
Okay.
I'd like for you to tell me about your favorite news story during your 4 years and 2 months in Grand Prairie.
Oh my favorite news story, huh? You know, I think that the favorite one that I think that the favorite one that I wrote myself, and you know, it's difficult to separate them all, but I think the favorite one that I wrote was one that I just did recently. Last Christmas, Turnpike Church of Christ, they went over to Venture, and Venture was having some kind of promotion saying the 100th person through the register gets everything free, and they were buying some toys for needy kids, and they came through the register and they were the 100th customer.
That was exciting.
That was a neat story, and it was kind of I mean, it was kind of a neat story, and I enjoyed doing that one. You know, I enjoyed, you know, all the stories really, though. I mean, it was kind of neat.
Well, it's been a delight to have you on an exit and an entrance interview, because we're going to enter with you into your Arlington adventure.
Thank you, Ruth.
For being with us.
Thanks.
You've been a real blessing to Grand Prairie during your tenure here, and we hope you'll kind of hang around the edges here too.
Okay. Thank you.
And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.